Google and Apple were fined billions of dollars after the EU cracked down on monopolistic practices by some of the world's largest corporations. And this woman is leading the charge. Margrethe Vestager is the EU's antitrust czar, and it's her job to enforce the union's vision of a fair and competitive market for all stakeholders. In recent years, that's seen her go up against Google, Fiat, Apple, and Gazprom. The companies have been accused by smaller rivals of unfairly using their financial clout to force out all competition. Vestager agrees, and it's led to her charging Apple $13 billion for unpaid back taxes. And Google has been slapped with a $2.4 billion fine for doctoring search results. Margrethe Vestager joins me now from Brussels, from the headquarters of the European Commission. Thanks so much for joining us, ma'am. When people hear that you go after Gazprom, they think, yeah, perhaps the Russians might be a little corrupt, might be a little dirty. But when it comes to Google or Apple, the response is altogether different, and there's much more shock and surprise. Tell me why.
Well, I ask myself the same question, because no matter your company, no matter your ownership, no matter your nationality, when you do business in Europe and do good business in Europe, well, of course you should play by the rules. And I unfortunately find that it is no matter the nationality or the size. You sometimes find that businesses, they cut corners and they do things that are illegal after our rule book.
You've hurt the pockets of some of the biggest tech giants in the world. These are Silicon Valley prophets in many ways. Everybody gives them a free pass. They're not going to roll over and die. We're hearing appeals are ahead. They're fighting back. Are you prepared for that?
Yes, of course. We never ever compromise on the quality of the work we do here, because this is a union built on the rule of law. So obviously we are very, very thorough. We go through the evidence, the fact of the case law, to prepare the strongest possible decision, because obviously we are prepared for fighting back for appeals in our court system, but we never, ever compromise on the quality of our casework.
There was a lovely write-up of you in the New Statesman. They called you the most powerful woman in Brussels. Is that true?
Well, you know, literally here power comes from the people. Europeans have decided over the decades that this portfolio should be a very strong one. A lot of competence is here because we want a fair single market where you compete on the merits. And that power is, of course, from the fact that 500 million Europeans expect you to do the job.
Are you winning?
Well, that, of course, remains to be seen, because when a case is appealed and a company goes to court, then, of course, it is for the court to decide. But we do prepare ourselves so thoroughly that we find that we have the strongest possible case.
Have you paid a price personally or professionally, given that you've gone after some very powerful people?
Well, I think that still remains to be seen. What I get is the privilege of having a very, very meaningful job, because I think it is important for people to see that no company is so big that they are above the law. That just as well as every sort of standalone, small, medium-sized company pay their taxes, so should the big multinationals do that. And that makes a lot of sense to me also personally. So I find that so far it has been a huge privilege to be allowed to work in this area.
With Apple, it was back taxes. With Google, it was antitrust. If I look at, for example, say Wall Street, people would readily expect that you're going to have some greedy bankers who are going to want to bend the rules. But when it comes to tech companies, are we in a place where the law and regulations are playing catch up with the complexity of these operations, so it makes it harder to catch those who are fudging the books or bending the rules?
Well, that is a very, very good point. Two comments here. I think basically when you sort of strip it naked, it's the same thing. It is still about greed. You want something by cutting corners, or fear of being sort of driven out of the market. But the tools that we need to catch it, they have to be more and more refined. So obviously we keep sharpening our tools. We get new competences in data mining, in managing huge quantities of data. And that, of course, is for us a challenge. But so far, actually, I think that we're up to it.
And if you'd allow me a broader political question, just before I let you go. In a time when we see rising nationalism on the continent, and sometimes the ugly side of the nationalistic coin, where we have people who don't want globalism, integration, don't want immigrants, don't want their markets opened up, they want to be more protectionist. Does it make your job more difficult?
Well, no, not my job as such, but I think it makes us all consider how trade, how an integrated world can be beneficial for more people. Because I think part of the reason for that reaction that you're quoting is exactly that people feel left out. And if you have this feeling that your society has turned into a business and you've been fired, well, no wonder if you get first frustrated and then angry. So I think there is a lot of listening to do to make sort of the integrated and globalized world work for people and not just for the selected few. And I think my job is part of actually doing that, so that you see that also the globalized multinational companies, they play by the same rule book as you will have to do as a maybe medium-sized standalone European company.
Margrethe Vestager, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.